Hey, this is a video by Pet Rock. So while doing my transmission, replacing the transmission fluid and filters on my Durango, which you can see in another video, I'll link it to in the description, I managed to bend the outer edges of my pan a little bit. And in this video I'm going to try to repair it by basically beating it back into shape. I haven't done this before, but I've read up a whole bunch on it, and hopefully I can get this right and I don't screw up the pan. If I do screw up the pan, then I'll probably end up going to a junkyard and picking up one off of a junker truck out there. So wish me luck. So first thing you need to do before doing anything is making sure that the bolt holes are smooth and flat. Oftentimes after multiple repeated oil changes, by torquing down the bolts, the bolt holes become high spots quite often. So this is a good thing to do just generally whenever you're, a good thing to check, I should say, just generally whenever you're changing the transmission fluid. When you have the pan off, just make sure that they're smooth to help prevent oil leaks. But either way, so what you do is basically you get something that will fit around in here, in this spot right here, so that you can use it as an anvil to pat down the holes. So what I'm using is an inner sleeve for one of my wife's control arm bushings that I removed in a previous video, that happens to fit perfectly in these in that space. So first you mount it in your vise like that. Get it in there tight. You take the pan, an area that you want to flatten. I'm going to use that one for right now. You don't need a big hammer. I'm using a relatively small hammer. I'm not sure on the weight of this thing. Let's see if it's written. Nope, it's not written on it. So either way, so just put it on your thing you're using as an anvil. You can use a socket or an old socket, or a nice a half-inch extension, or something along those lines. Anyway, so it doesn't take a lot of force. You just need to tap it, because again, this is thin metal, so it will bend fairly easily. So you just want to tap it and tap it back in place like that. Literally that much force. You let the hammer do the work. You don't need to whack down really hard on the pan. You'll damage it. So you just want to tap it. Make sure check that it's smooth, that you're level. Just tap it like that, and that's it. Just go do that all the way around the pan. Now, the reason you want to do this before starting in on bending the pan back is you need to use a level. You need to use something like a level like this. This one's magnetic, so you can basically see where the pan is bent and where it is not. If the bolt holes are high spots, that'll give you a false negative, and you'll be bending in the wrong spot when you don't need to. So first thing, just smooth out all the bolt holes. Okay, now that you've gotten all flattened, the next thing to do is to basically take the hardest hit parts. For example, on this edge, I've got one that's got a nice bevel to it. Yeah, I really messed up on this pan. The black RTV just did not want to come off. And this was the only pry point, or actually these two spots were the pry points for my transmission, so that's why this part got damaged. Anyway, so luckily it's not that hard to repair. So first thing you want to do is take out the big parts that are the big areas that are highly damaged. So I usually take a rag, so I don't mar the surface anymore, and a pair of vice grips, or in this case a pair of channel locks, and just bend it back into shape. Keep repeating that over and over again, getting it as close to straight as possible. You're not going to get it perfect doing it this way. This is just to get you in the general ballpark. Just little bits at a time, and you'll be able to get it pretty darn close. Just keep double checking where you're at. Once you get it pretty good, just move on to the next one, and then we're going to smooth this out in a minute. So one thing to help you out a little bit with this is If you get a set of channel locks like this, make sure they have a deep mouth. And in my case, it bent at this little corner right in here. So you want to get the channel locks as deep in as you can, so to ensure that you're just bending it at this corner right here, rather than just bending up the whole thing. You want to keep this surface as flat as you can. Well, at least that's the ultimate goal. But if you bend it a little bit, don't worry about it. We'll bang it back out later. Okay, next thing you do, once you got everything in the general position where you bent them up back into general shape, again, take your time. It's gonna be basically a bunch of trial and error. You want to make small little adjustments to get it back in line. Otherwise, you're just gonna mess it all up, and you're just gonna get lost and end up just having to throw out the pan. Anyway, so once you've got this in the general location that you want it to, next thing you need to do is you need to get a set of punches similar to these, and basically tap around the bolt holes, getting the bolt holes flat. Once you've gotten those flat, then you need to get a smaller set of smaller punches that will fit in this groove right in here on either side of this little hill. It's a channel on the other side, so valley on the other side. So anyway, you do not want to flatten out this whole centerpiece. You want this little bump is supposed to be there. It's supposed to basically be a reservoir for the RTV, because again, this vehicle came with RTV from the factory. It did not come with a gasket. So anyway, so you want to basically hit along this line in a quick and repeated fashion, similar to a pneumatic hammer you see on those blacksmithing shows. It just basically hits it really hard, not really hard, but hits it fast and repeatedly, you just want to keep doing that over and over again until you smooth this whole thing out. So you don't want to do this on a wooden bench though, because the wood will actually take, or will give. So the metal will actually deform, and you'll get little dimples in the metal. You don't want the dimples, you want it smooth. So it's better to, if you have a large plate or a large piece of metal, not plate like dinner plate, but large plate of metal, or if you have a smooth cement floor like I do, then you can use that as your backing, so that the metal will just give until it hits the smooth floor or smooth backing. So you want to take your small chisel or your small punch like this. Make sure you got that in camera, and you want to just drag it across, hitting it very repeatedly and fast. Just do that over and over again. All the way across. You'll hear the metal, the sound of the metal the sound of the banging change as you get as it gets closer and starts hitting the floor, or your backing, I should say. Just keep doing that until it's all a uniform sound, and you'll be pretty close to smooth. You want to double check your work, make sure you're not going too far, or to see how much further you have to go. So one way to do this is you set up a level similar to this, where you have a side that you know is good. In my case, it's the back side, and you compare it to the front, and then you just have a little backlight, and you look. And on this side right here, this was one of the areas that I've already worked that is pretty good. If you notice, both the edges are you don't see any daylight coming through except for the trench. Then if you move it further down to an area where I do need to work, the level doesn't hit smoothly across the entire flange. So I have to work on this area to bend it down, bend it up a little bit more. So yeah, just keep checking your work and move slowly. If you start seeing little dimples similar to those, don't worry too much. You can just take a hammer or a smooth punch and beat those back down again. Of course, that's going to bend the whole flange back this way, so you're gonna have to work it back and forth. One thing I did notice, I had this small punch, this thin punch that fit perfectly within this groove right here, So I was able to use that as the and hit this flat spot to make the flange smooth and flat. A lot easier than it is with a small circular tip like this. The corners, obviously, you have to do with I had to do with this kind of a punch and just work my way around as I described earlier, and get it as good as you can, as close as you can. So it's going to take a while, a lot of back and forth, testing your work. Making sure that you're going in the right direction. For example, you don't want it to be too far bent one direction and not the other, or and vice versa. So keep checking your work with the level as I described, and you should get it pretty good. Okay, so I think I got it as close as I'm going to get it, as smooth as I'm going to get it. If you look closely, there is a little bit of abrasion on here from where I had gouged it a little bit while trying to take the pan off. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some emery cloth, and I'm going to sand this down a little bit to smooth it out, and then to get it basically roughly smooth. And then after that, I'm going to use some more fine grain sandpaper, a couple different levels to get it smooth all the way around. Now, since I was also banging on my cement floor in my garage, some of this area, the surrounding area, may have gotten scuffed up a little bit. So I'm going to touch those areas up as well. Okay, I think I got it all shiny and smooth again. So this is a lot better, obviously, than it was when I started. I'm quite happy with it. Hopefully, with my fingers crossed, it won't leak. But one thing you want to do is, because there is some imperfection in this, you're never going to be able to get it completely flat unless you have like the perfect tools to do this. You know, where you can fit it in the little grooves perfectly. But what I would advise doing is, if you're going to try to use a gasket like I'm going to do, a rubber gasket, the gasket may not seal properly against areas like this and like this where it's been marred up a little bit. So what I advise doing is putting a thin film of RTV around the areas that are scuffed up a little bit, and then put your gasket on top of that. You don't have to put RTV all the way around the entire pan, because the gasket, the normal gasket, will work perfectly fine on the areas that weren't scuffed up. It's just the areas where you got some ripples that you want to put the RTV, and that'll help fill up any gaps that may form, or that may be there between the gasket and the pan. You don't need to use you don't need to use RTV on the between the gasket and the transmission unless you gouged up the transmission housing, and if you did that, then you got bigger problems. So one of the last things I did before putting this back on the truck was, after beating on this for so much, the paint that was on here had chipped up and flaked off. And I'm lucky enough not to live in an area that has a big rust problem, but I used to, so I still worry about it. If you live in an area like the Rust Belt, for example, that has rust issues, or places where they use a lot of salt on the roads, you'll probably want to be concerned with this. I took some emery cloth, folded it in half, similar to like this, and just rubbed it in the groove like that, to dislodge any loose paint, and to also prep the surface for me to add additional paint. So I just picked up a can of gloss black spray paint from the local auto parts store and gave it a few coats. This is coat number 2, actually, out of the 3 that I'm going to totally give it total. It's almost dry, or tacky, I should say, for me to add the 3rd coat. Anyway, so once this is dried up all the way, I'll bolt it back up to the car. Now that I've fixed the pan as well as I think I can, hopefully it won't leak, I'm going to replace the reseat, I should say, the drain plug that I had installed a few years back. I'll be doing that under a separate video, because some people have been asking about it. It's actually quite simple. Well, I hope this video was helpful to you. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the comments section. I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have. Now, granted, I am not an expert on metal shaping, so there may be better ways of doing this. There are probably 100 different ways of doing this, but this is the way I did it. And I'll update this video probably just in the description, or maybe edit the video itself to, if YouTube will let me, showing the results to see if this actually leaked or not. Hopefully it won't. So hopefully this helps somebody out. Obviously this doesn't only apply to transmission pans, it applies to pretty much any oil pan where it got bent in some way or shape or form. So anyway, hopefully you like this video, hopefully help you out. Don't forget to subscribe and leave comments and like it and all that other stuff. Thanks.